Who are you and what are you doing in Central City?
I'm the Flash!
Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here once again with another video on The Flash Season 6. So back in 2016, or 2016 as some of you might say, only a week or two I think it was after Season 2 of The Flash wrapped up, yep, feels weird even mentioning Season 2, and Barry just ran back and caused Flashpoint like a very naughty boy. We had the start of a new era in DC Comics, that being DC Rebirth, and with this we had a new run of The Flash in the comics. Not a new character, just like a new story run. But along with this, of course, we had some new characters, just that The Flash wasn't a new character, obviously. And the new antagonizing force, and I guess just major character, I guess you could say in general, to be introduced was that of Godspeed, who from memory appears right at the end of the issue number 1. I think he shows up right at the end of the first issue. Now, since this point, there had always been a curiosity with the character of Godspeed, mainly based off his looks. Like, some liked his story and where it went, but it was a bit average, to be completely honest. Like, yeah, bit average, like nothing over the top, nothing that stands out. But it was definitely his design and his aesthetics, which made people interested in the character and, a must-have or a must-see on the Flash TV show at some point in time. And even though you really couldn't categorize him as a straight-up villain due to the run that the character has had in the comics since then, which could be implemented into the show later on, like who knows. Many do still want him to be portrayed as a villain more than anything on the show if he does have a decent run. And when we got to season 5 of The Flash, in the last several episodes or so, almost more than 3 years after his first appearance in the comics, we got Godspeed in live action in episode 18 of season 5 of The Flash, which was fittingly titled, well, Godspeed. Obviously in this episode we had Godspeed serve as like Nora West Allen's or Excess's, the first villain of Excess, or the first task as a hero, and had Godspeed also serve as like a key part in Nora discovering her powers, as he of course dabbed, which has become a meme, and then zapped her with lightning, which in turn destroyed the device keeping her powers she inherited from her father at bay or, hidden. This obviously done in an attempt to try and keep her safe, like Iris did and all that, and everyone knew. Godspeed was August Hart in this episode, just like in the comics, but obviously this was set in the future, and he was using synthetic Speed Force or fake Speed Force energy to get his powers, and that's, what he was doing in that episode. Getting various things to perfect all of that. Like, he was much closer to it than, like, Zoom ever was. Of course, with the help of an imprisoned Eobard Thawne, aka Reverse Flash, Nora was able to defeat Godspeed in a bit of an underwhelming manner, which didn't please fans that much that were sort of looking forward to him. But I think most of us didn't think that would be his only appearance. Like, that was a one and done sort of appearance. Because his suit looked really good. Like, it was a very high quality suit. It's like, are you going to waste that on, like, not even, 10 minutes of screen time? Unlikely. So we all thought that we would be seeing Godspeed in live action again fairly soon. And, well, we didn't have to wait all that long, as in the first few minutes of The Flash this season, in episode 1, we had Godspeed loose on the streets of Central City, but in present day this time around. And as you would expect, we had Godspeed facing the Flash for the first time. However, we learned soon enough, once Barry took this Godspeed down, that it wasn't actually the real Godspeed, or at least the one we met last season. It was some weird clone of sorts that made a weird noise, and as we found out pretty much straight after this, that Godspeed clone wasn't the first one. There had been a few over the past months leading up to that point, and at that point, I think most of us watching had our curiosity poked and prodded, as we now wanted all of that explained. And, along with this, explained as soon as possible. And at this point in the season, we haven't had any major clue as to what is going on there. Some things have been introduced this season that could end up being connected, but nothing of any major substance. Like, no one's said, oh yeah, remember those clones we sent out, or anything like that. And it seems like we might get some explanation to all of this soon enough, and this is due to set photos that I'm sure a lot of you have already seen, which shows that Godspeed will be in episode 18 of this season as well. Obviously, we don't know if he is in episodes leading up to that one, or episodes to follow, but we just know that, from public filming, that he will at the very least, be in episode 18 of this season. And as some of you might have been able to catch on, episode 18 of this season would mark the 1 year or 1 season anniversary of his first appearance on the show, as he first appeared in episode 18 of last season, like I said earlier. Now, in these set photos, he was once again taking on the Flash, as you would, hope and expect, but the Flash was also assisted by none other than Pied Piper, who is now an ally thanks to changes made in Season 2, which we should assume is the same in this New Earth Prime. Now, we don't know much about the episode based off these set photos and that general info. Like, we don't know the episode title, and due to Godspeed, if like last season, having voice work done after shooting, we don't have dialogue from Godspeed. But if you want to go check out all the stuff from regards to that episode from what we have so far, I will leave the link to Canada Graph's blog in the description down below. We can see all the photos and all the information. So if you're intrigued, go check that out after this video. But with Godspeed appearing in episode 18 of this season, what can we possibly expect to see from him in this season if he does go past this one episode and even maybe appear before? Well, let's go over a couple of possibilities, and I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on it. So be sure to let me know all of your thoughts and theories in the comment section down below, whether you just want to expand on something I talk about, or you have a completely different thought or theory that you want to, tell me or tell everyone else. So let me know all of that in the comment section down below. Now, the first option is something, or an option that I think a lot of people think is a possibility. Not something that they, I think, necessarily want, but something that would, I guess, make sense in regards to the storyline for this season. And that is that whether this Godspeed is the real one or another clone, that they are, like, essentially a troop of black hole, if you want to call them. This could be created, they could be created through, like, replicating or accessing the Speed Force in some way, shape, or form. We don't know what's going to happen from episode 13 up to, 17 and 18. There could be an episode where Barry gets captured, Wally gets captured, or something like that, or some sort of Speed Force energy is taken, and then they can maybe replicate that Speed Force energy or something like that, and then lead to creating Godspeed. We don't know what's going to happen in between these episodes from now until this airs, so there's a lot of different things going on there, but a troop of black hole does make sense, because we have seen them, getting the metahuman, troops, I guess you could say. We've had Ultraviolet, and now the new version of Dr. Light, who says we couldn't have a Speedster version there who was using either real replicated Speed Force energy or even some synthetic Speed Force, sort of like what the future Godspeed was using, in the future, like we saw last season. So that's a big possibility. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that was the case. I don't think the people that were like, I love Godspeed, would be the biggest fans of that, because I think it's going to be like a one and done villain, maybe, unless they want to stretch him out, and he could be a player in towards the end, but it wouldn't be the main villain in that case. He'd just be a pawn in Black Hole's game. So that's a high possibility of happening, but I don't think it's the possibility that a lot of people would want. Another theory I've heard come around, which I'm not the biggest fan of, I've just included in here because I know people will put it in the comments, and that's that Godspeed becomes Red Death in some way, shape, or form. It's possible, anything's possible, but I think you're sort of undercutting both characters by doing that. And I must say, I don't think either character is really that great. Like, Red Death is part of the DC Metals thing, and it was just a pretty substandard character. Like, it was pretty basic. There was nothing overly interesting there. Like, Godspeed's probably more interesting than Red Death, but I still think there's fans of those characters, and I think you are undercutting both characters if you want to, make one merge into the other, if that makes sense. I don't know. It could happen, but I think you're better off just making Red Death its own entity and just have someone else becoming that in a future season if they want to use that character. So Godspeed becoming Red Death is a bit of a meh. I don't really care for it, and I know a lot of people probably wouldn't be happy if that was the case. But I know there's people out there that sort of push for that theory, if you want to call it pushing, but yeah. The cool one would be if it is like a proper August Heart or Godspeed that now exists in present day, thanks to Crisis and this New Earth Prime. Obviously, in episode 1, we saw that they were clones and stuff like that, so it would be a stretch to maybe think that Godspeed for real existed in present day, unless August Heart was captured and Black Hole was replicating these Godspeeds based off him or something like that. I don't know, they could go down that route if they wanted to, but I'd like to think that maybe due to Crisis and this New Earth Prime, that maybe Godspeed exists in present day or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. I guess the big question would be, like, where has he been since now? Like, is he going to just randomly show up in episode 18? Is that going to be his first appearance or anything like that? That's a bit of a stretch to think if that's the case, but I think that'd be a pretty cool option. Another option is that he just simply comes back from the future. Like, that's probably the easiest one to explain, that he's drawn back here through some event. Maybe he can sense it through the Speed Force or whatever it might be, that he is just brought back here, or maybe there's a certain thing that happens in the timeline which he goes, I'm going to travel back to that date, and he just comes back for some reason. It's just the future Godspeed. That's probably the most simple way to do it. If they wanted to have Godspeed in one episode, and it was going to be the proper Godspeed, not one of the clones, That would be the easiest thing to explain. He just decides, okay, I'm just going to run back in time then, or time travel in some way, shape, or form. That's probably the easiest way to go about it. And you get the real Godspeed, I guess. So I guess you could complain if he's just going to be in one episode again, but that's the easiest way to do it, in my opinion. That doesn't really overly affect the storyline if they don't want Godspeed to be a major player. And another option in regards to how Godspeed could play into this season is that he's actually an ally. Like first he could be an antagonist and then, you know, helps Team Flash come the end of the season, pretty much just like sort of what happens in the comics. I think they'd have to rush it, obviously, especially if he doesn't appear till maybe episode 18 or maybe like episode 17 or 16 or something like that. But you could easily play that, especially maybe if he is or was a part of Black Hole and then sort of snaps out of that and then is able to help Team Flash take down Black Hole or whoever the big bad is that's sort of connected to Black Hole. I'm still thinking that Black Hole is the main villain and Joseph Carver is going to be the big bad at the end of the season. If you've read the comics, you know what Joseph Carver becomes. If you want to read it and just spoil yourself on Google, you can do that if you want. It wouldn't surprise me if they went down that route because they could do a fairly cool final fight scene if they wanted to do that. And maybe having Godspeed there to help would make sense. You could have even like Wally come back for that episode, Jay Garrick be there as well, and have a massive speed to team up against what's happening there. So that could be what happens there, but as I said, I think it would have to be either a, you know, the proper Godspeed that's there, or at least a clone that has proper functioning and doesn't just scream randomly when you take off his mask like we saw in episode 1. But he could die as well. That'd probably be that might have to be what they do there at the end of the season, is that maybe he dies in that final battle, but he might have a good short arc there in that, you know, those certain amount of episodes if he's there. So I'm intrigued to see what they do with Godspeed this season now that he's coming back. I think we all expected him to come back in some way, shape, or form based off the fact that he was in episode 1. We're just not sure, and we're still unsure how he comes back and what role he plays. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm sure a lot of you guys are. But we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in the back half of this season. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like and it shows support. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts and theories on what I talked about. And if you want to expand on anything, let me know that in the comment section down below as well. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.